My name is Tom Gerard. I am the interviewer and a volunteer with the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center. It is Saturday, October 7th, 2023. Today I have the privilege of interviewing Ron Cote, and we are conducting this interview in Biddeford. Ron, I'd like to start out by asking you when and where were you born?
I was born on November 4th, 1949, here in Biddeford at the Troll Hospital.
And for somebody that may be listening to this and doesn't know anything about the Troll Hospital, where was that located?
It's on May Street, across from, is it Southbridge or?
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah. I think that building is vacant right now.
It's vacant,
been
yes.
For a number of years.
Yep.
And I want to thank you for the historical ancestry that you gave me. I found it to be very, very interesting. Can you talk about how your family came to Biddeford?
My father was born here in Biddeford and lived here his whole life. My mother was born in Canada, in Quebec, and that's an interesting story because my grandfather, her father, was working in the woods in Biddeford. He was like a lumberjack or whatever, and he was staying in Alacha Beach with his sister while my grandmother was living in Canada with her 4 kids. She got fed up with that kind of life and took the 4 kids in a taxi and came to Biddeford by taxi.
From Canada?
Yep. My grandmother was a very interesting lady. She would go to the bank every week and put $1 in her account.
And did your grandfather follow?
Yes. Then they lived in Biddeford,
Yeah.
and she had 2 more kids here in Biddeford. So my mother had there was 6 kids and 6 siblings in her family.
Yeah.
So.
And when I was reading the history, it looked like there was a duel of some sort generations back. Do you know anything about that?
My grandfather, her father, my mother's father, his father, I believe, lived in Nashua, New Hampshire. That's where my grandfather was born. And he had, from what I understand through my aunts, that he had a duel on the bridge of Nashua, New Hampshire for his wife. And he shot the guy, I know, and won his wife, and they moved to Canada.
So that was your grandmother, correct?
No, that was my grandfather's father.
Okay.
So
So this is back a couple of generations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we probably don't
yeah,
know
it
the
wasn't my
answer to that
grandfather
question.
having a duel for my grandmother. No.
Okay. Interesting story, anyway. How did your parents meet? You know?
My mother lived on Wentworth Street in Biddeford. My father lived on Green Street. And where my mother lived, it was like a little court area, like a little parking lot, a little street, a little parking lot off Wentworth. And there was a little path that went from their backyard to Green Street. And you could see where my father lived in an apartment on Green Street. And my father was 16 years old. My mother was 11. And they were liked each other. I don't know, the boyfriend-girlfriend thing at that point, but they liked each other. And so they would see each other a lot just by going. You didn't have to go around Wentworth to go to Green Street. It just went through that little path. And my mother, I believe, was pretty mature for her age because she got married really young and had me at a very young age too. So,
Which was not unusual in those
no,
days.
my mother got married at 17, had me at 18. And my father was 5 years, like I said, he was 5 years older than my mother. So.
And what did your parents do for work?
My father worked in the mill, Pepperell Mill, for 29 years, mainly on the second shift, 3 to 11. My mother stayed home. I have 3 siblings, three sisters. Yeah. My mother stayed home with the kids at the beginning, and then she ended up working at the mill also in the blanket department, I believe.
Yeah.
So after my father, I think they closed the Pepperell, my father went to the Navy Yard for another 15 years and then retired from there and worked part-time as a janitor at Biddeford High School, which he really enjoyed because he talked to all the kids and all the athletes, and because he loved sports. So.
And your siblings, are you close to your siblings, or were you when
Yeah,
you
they're
were
all in
growing
Biddeford.
up?
They're all in Biddeford.
Yeah.
I was born in 49. My sister was born 11 months later than me, Nancy. So she's 11 months younger than me. Anne Marie is, she's what, 4 years younger than me. And then there's Joanne, who's 6 years younger than me. So Joanne is 67, Anne Marie's 69, Nancy's 73. I'm 73 right now, but I'm going to be 74 in November. So.
And did you have aunts, uncles, cousins living in the immediate area?
Yeah, my father was the only child in his family, so all his aunts and so forth have all passed away. My mother's, her whole family grew up in Biddeford, but then they all decided to move to Connecticut. My grandparents and my mother's siblings all moved to Connecticut. A lot of them started working at Pratt & Whitney, and my mother was the only one that stayed in Biddeford out of all the siblings. And one of my aunts is still alive. She's 85, my mother's youngest sister, and she's the only one left in the family. But I still, in fact, I called her this week. I still stay in touch.
Yeah.
It's pretty close to them because I went to prep school in Connecticut, and on weekends we could leave the campus, and I would go to one of my aunt's houses and stay there for the weekend.
Well, that must have been nice.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And did your parents ever consider moving to Connecticut, or?
Nope.
No.
I don't. No, my father never drove. Never drove. We didn't have a car. We lived on Green Street in an apartment my whole life. And interesting because the rent was like $5 a week. And we didn't own a car. My father walked to work. I walked to school. It wasn't far to St. Louis. And my grandmother lived on Green Street. One of my aunts we lived on the 3rd floor. My aunt lived on the 2nd floor. So, lived there for over 25 years on Green Street. So, I don't know.
That's good. What about your childhood experiences and memories of growing up in Biddeford? What are some of your vivid memories?
Well, one of my best friends, Paul Cameri, grew up on Green Street. We went to school together for, as you well know. We played outside a lot, and my whole life was sports. And so when I was young, we played baseball or football or basketball outdoors, and pretty much that's what I did.
Yeah, where did you do that?
Growing up, we went to the Mayfield a lot, played basketball there a lot, all the way up to my high school years. And there was like a field across the street on Green Street that we played with a group of guys. We played football when I was younger. And then when we played Little League baseball, obviously, at West Biddeford Little League at the Mayfield. So,
well, what was that experience like, playing Little League and being in a uniform? And as we were talking offline, I mean, you were identified as, a really good athlete at a very young age.
I think the league started with us.
And it started in 1959.
Right.
Yeah.
At the top field, where it's right now, that field is a girls' softball field, I believe. And we started that was our West Biddeford Little League was there. And I remember as a 9-year-old, you're going up against 12-year-olds. And I was fortunate that Chuck Clifford was a 12-year-old and he was on my team because he could throw the ball pretty hard. And a lot of kids were afraid to face him, But that was great. I would be excited about that when I made the Little League team and played Little League 4 years there. It was a great experience.
Was that good preparation for when you went into junior high and high school sports, having played on an organized team?
I think so. I like I told you, I love sports, and so I played baseball, and I think I played 4th and 5th grade basketball. I think there was a league at the Parish Hall that I played in. Football, no, because I don't think we had Pee Wee football back then. I think it started in junior high. And so going to my junior high years, I think that all prepared me. My father worked with me a lot in the yard, playing baseball especially. He never had the opportunity to play sports. He loved sports, but never had the opportunity. He was taken out of school in the 8th grade and had to go work. And but we played catch a lot, baseball in the yard, and my interest just grew as someone who loved sports and wanted to play sports and so forth.
When did you realize you were a gifted athlete? You even remember?
I don't know if I was gifted, Tom, but
You were.
I think I worked hard. I loved it, and so I put a lot of effort into it, and I played a lot. I didn't do much else really, and growing up, every chance I could get to go into the Parish Hall and shoot baskets, I did. I don't know, Tom. I worked hard. I never said that I was gifted. I did things pretty well, I guess, and I don't know. I loved it.
Well, I think working hard is part of it.
Yeah,
for natural
if you
athletes.
love something and you
Yeah.
practice it. I have a grandson right now who is not involved in athletics, but he's a drummer. He's 14 years old and he practices every day.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and and that's sort of like I was with sports growing up.
So what was it like growing up in Biddeford for you?
I don't know if I knew anything else. Our life was pretty basic.
Yeah.
Lived in an apartment, small apartment, 3 sisters. We didn't have a car. Walked everywhere. Played outside a lot. My mother especially was pretty disciplined with us, so she was pretty strict with us, which is good. And it was all I knew, and it was fine.
Did you spend much time in downtown Biddeford? Do you remember growing up?
No, I don't. Not a lot. If my father had to go buy something at the store, sometimes I would walk downtown with him and so forth. But as we got older, the Puritan was a place where high school kids hung out after games and so forth. But I might have gone there a few times, but that wasn't really my thing. And so I don't think I spent a lot of time downtown.
Yeah.
Spent more time at the Mayfield or the Parish Hall or in the schoolyard or, doing something, playing baseball or football, whatever.
Movies? You go to
Yeah,
any movies
yeah.
downtown?
Went to
we
the
had 2 movie theaters when we were
City
growing up.
Theater
Yeah.
in Biddeford, and then the Central Theater,
Yeah.
where the police station is now.
Yeah.
I remember going there growing up quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you didn't skate, right? You weren't a skater. So
I wasn't a
you
skater.
You didn't spend time at Westbrook or St. Louis Field. Yeah.
My wife Claire, who I was going out with, was a pretty good skater, and I went a few times with her, and I wasn't very good. And if I'm not good at something, I criticized myself. I was my own worst critic, and so if I didn't do something right or good, I didn't pursue it. And skating was one of those things that I didn't do very well. And football, basketball, and baseball were the things that I spent my time doing. And
Sure.
but I did go at times to Westbrook Skating Ring and so forth. And in fact, St. Louis alumni had a skating ring there too. That I went a few times. But if I went on the ice and I fell, I would be upset about that, and then I wouldn't continue. I think one of the things, if I would take something back from my high school years, would be that, I love sports. I worked hard at it, and I was fairly successful. I would change my attitude a little. I was a little cocky, and I think it was because the fear of failure. I didn't want to. If I missed a shot in basketball, I'd get mad at myself or whatever. I would change that, because as I became a coach, I never wanted that attitude with my players, because I think attitude was my motto. Was attitude is everything, and so that was important to me.
So Ron Cote, the coach, might have struggled with Ron Cote, the player.
Good point, Tom. You picked that up well. Yes, I would have wanted Ron Cote as the athlete, but I would have worked with Ron Cote and talked to him many times about maybe his attitude a little, as far as being so hard on himself. So, yes.
Did you feel the pressure from outside, or just from yourself to?
Pretty much for myself, Tom. No, I think the bigger the game, or the more pressure on the game, or whatever, I think I did better in those situations. Back then the rivalry, Tom, between, as you all know, Biddeford, St. Louis, and Thornton Academy was pretty heavy, and we didn't really have a gym in basketball. We played at Steve White Gym was our home court, which is Biddeford's home court. So when we played Biddeford, they had to lock the doors. The place was packed. Well, obviously the rivalry of the fans getting on Ron Cote was pretty heavy, and I think I rose to that. I kind of liked that. And in football, 8,000 people at the games. When we played Biddeford, Waterhouse Field, or at St. Louis Field, the place was packed.
It's no doubt it was very, very competitive. That
very.
There's no doubt it seemed like everything.
Yes.
Even us that weren't athletes, we lived and died by whether St. Louis won if you were a St. Louis student, or Biddeford won if you were a Biddeford student. And there were tremendous teams, especially in football and basketball during the time you were in high school. For both schools.
If both schools would have been combined then, Tom, there's no one in the state that would have touched us in a lot of things.
I suspect there would have been 4 state championships in football and maybe 2 or 3 in basketball.
No question.
Right. Yeah.
Because my junior year in basketball, we were pretty good. And Biddeford was number 1 in Western Maine in basketball. They eventually lost in the tournament to Lewiston, I believe. But they had a great team, and we were pretty good. And same in football.
Yeah.
Funny story is, in the summer I was working at St. Joseph Cemetery cutting grass. I think it was the summer going into my junior year, and this car pulled in St. Joseph Cemetery, and it looked like the Biddeford Mafia. It was a big black limousine like, and Art Dakota and a guy named Paul Benoit got out of the car, and they talked to me about transferring to Biddeford and playing for Biddeford. And it was like a recruiting, not knowing any different then. But I went home and talked to my parents about it and so forth. And I think one of the reasons, or a couple of reasons I stayed at St. Louis was I wanted to play football for Bob Cote. And my friends were also at St. Louis. And so I stayed there. But you look back on it now, and here I am. I was a teacher at Biddeford for 34 out of my 37 years, and a coach for over 30 years over there. And should I have gone back then? I don't know. I mean, you make decisions, and
I'll give you an answer. No, you shouldn't.
you make, there are a lot of decisions in your life that you make decisions on, and you kind of wonder if they were good or bad. Yeah. It ended up okay for Ron Cote, but that's an interesting story.
It is. And I had heard that rumor before, and I was thinking of asking you, but I wasn't sure whether to or not. If that was true, but that is true then.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm sure that was a tough decision because they had some good team. I grew up with some of those kids, some really good kids.
I mean, I coached with Mike Landry for many years at Biddeford and taught school with him, and we both taught phys ed, and he's a friend of mine. He was a good friend of mine, and
he married one of our classmates.
That's right, Carol. Carol Willett, and Dick Sausha was a great guy. I know all those guys. Carl Goodwin.
Yeah.
But,
they were all good, and it's funny because we all spent a lot of time at the Mayfield and played basketball on those courts and at the pool hall on Elm Street. Yeah. And I never remember anybody getting into a fight, any of the athletes, over who was better or we're going to do this to you next week or any of that. Everybody was just friendly. It seemed to me anyway. I don't know what it seemed to you like as the athlete.
The pool room you mentioned was called Ciblans.
Yeah.
And a lot of Biddeford guys and some St. Louis guys were in there, and you felt going in that we might have some trouble here, but there wasn't.
But I never saw any trouble.
No,
there at all.
One of the things was another interesting story is as an 8th grader, we had a pretty good football team, junior high, and we were going for the Twin City Championship or whatever against Biddeford. And I went to see a game at Waterhouse Field, and I was walking around the field with my friends. I was only an 8th grader. And Biddeford was practicing, and they had a dummy there with my name on it. And I found that, as an 8th grader, I said, wow, they're going to get me in this next game and whatever, Some of that stuff happened throughout my career.
There was a lot of passion. Let's put it that way. Maybe more from the fans sometimes. But
you mentioned about playing basketball at the Mayfield. Desi, who everybody knows in Biddeford, he was older than me, but I was a freshman, and I would go to the Mayfield, and all the high school guys from Biddeford, St. Louis, would gather there and play and scrimmage, play games. And Desi would always pick me on his team, and I was a St. Louis guy, and Desi was pretty much all Biddeford. And to this day, I still remember that, and I appreciate that because I think that made me better also playing against older players like Dick Agresti and those guys. So Desi gave me that opportunity by selecting me on his team all the time. I don't know if that was a way of trying to get me to go to Biddeford or whatever, but
I remember he just seemed to love sports and wanted to see athletes be the best. And
tremendous.
I mean,
tremendous.
Yeah, right.
I mean, even up to a few years ago when he passed away. I mean, these kids who are here now still, remember him.
He used to come to, I played sports in grammar school. He used to come to our St. Mary's games, and same thing. He talked to everybody. He had his bike, and he'd go from field to field, and he knew all the athletes coming up the ranks. And, so talk a little bit about people like Dick Agresti and Ted Cowat and Paul Toomey. Those guys used to play at the Mayfield, and maybe even people before them. Were any of them your role models in terms of athletics or behavior or anything?
Dick Agresti was a good athlete, played football and basketball at St. Louis, and he was ahead of me. I can remember when I was a freshman in football, Bob Cote used to make the varsity scrimmage, the freshman team, and a few plays. And I remember them, they were on offense, and they gave the ball to Dick Agresti, and I was a defensive back, and here comes Dick Agresti, and I got to tackle him. I'm only a freshman. So that was an interesting experience. But, the guy that was my idol was Red Siboney, who played, he was a quarterback at St. Louis, basketball player and baseball player. I think he graduated like in 1962 maybe, or right around there.
63, yeah.
Right around there. And he wore number 13, and that's why I wore number 13 in high school. I wanted that number. But you mentioned other guys there. Paul Toomey was a great athlete at Biddeford High School. In fact, my first coaching job at Biddeford in basketball, Paul Toomey was my assistant coach. And Paul's a great guy, and some of those guys I looked up to growing up.
Yeah, a lot of good athletes at that time, and good people also.
Yes.
I saw in the information you submitted that you speak French. I guess I didn't realize that, but it shouldn't be a surprise to me that you do. I'm going back to your family now. Did you speak French a lot at home?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I've lost a lot along the years here. I think if you spoke French to me, I would understand what you're saying and so forth. I might have a difficult time maybe having a conversation with someone. But back in those days, my mother and my grandmother, they spoke French. So we spoke French a lot in the house, and which was a good thing, but it also hurt me because when I took my verbal SATs in high school, I didn't do very well on them. And one of the factors they told me was because, I spoke so much French at home and so forth. So I had to go to prep school because of that. And I went to prep school for a year to bring up my SATs, my verbal SAT. And in fact, I was pretty proficient in French back then, to the point where when I went to the University of Maine, I wanted to major in French. I wanted to be a French teacher. And Paul Cameri and I we were in a French class our freshman year, and the teacher said...
at UMaine?
At UMaine. And the teacher said, if you guys, if some of you are really, really good in French, we're going to move you up to another level. Well, Paul Cameri said, well, let's not answer too many questions for the first 2 weeks. So we stay in the class, and that's what we did. We didn't answer too many questions. We stayed in the class. We got an A. And but then after that, I changed my mind because the French, we had to read these books that are written in French and so forth. I said I don't think that's for me. And so I changed to majoring in phys ed and social studies.
And did your grandparents speak only French, or did they speak some English also?
Oh, my grandmother from Canada spoke French. She had a hard time speaking English.
Yeah.
And she would, they moved to Connecticut, she would write letters to my mother, and they were all in French.
Yeah.
And my grandmother on the Cote side spoke French, but she was, proficient in English.
Yeah. And what about your experiences academically at St. Louis? I mean, when you look back at those now, what are, memories, good or bad, that aren't sports related?
Well, I knew I knew my junior year in high school that I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. First, a coach first, but I knew that if I was going to be a high school coach, I needed to be a teacher. So that was my goal back then, and that was pretty much based on my relationship with Bob Cote as my coach and someone I admired and so forth. And so I studied enough, I guess, in high school to make sure that my grades were good so that I could get into college, because I needed that 4 years to become a teacher so that I could do what I really love, which was teaching and coaching. And I accomplished that goal. Went a roundabout by having to go to prep school first for a year, which was a great experience, before I went to the University of Maine.
Yeah. Did you see a huge contrast versus the education at St. Louis to public schools when you went to teach in public schools, which, were close in time?
Well, I think our classes at St. Louis were smaller. I think there was a lot of discipline with the brothers and even the nuns growing up elementary school. So the discipline part, I think, was greater at the Catholic school than the public school. I carried that over to my teaching years by trying to maintain discipline classes and so forth. And but yeah, there was a difference, Tom. Yeah. I think.
Not counting Bob Cote, who everybody loved, who was one of your favorite teachers at St. Louis?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Not sure. I can remember Brother Clement. You know what? He taught typing, yeah. But you know what? That became a good skill that we needed.
Yeah.
And to this day, even on the computer or whatever. Yeah. But
same here. Yeah. I skipped physics and took that, and I got more practical use out of that than I would have done in physics, I think.
There was Brother Earl and some of these other teachers. I don't remember. I remember obviously Brother Richard. Oh. He was the AD, and Brother Gilbert was the AD prior to that. But I don't know if there's anyone else that stands out.
Yeah. What did you have? I know you had him as a coach, but Mr. Coyne, did you have him?
Dudley Coyne?
Yeah.
I don't think I had him as a teacher.
Well, what was he like a coach? Because he was, I don't even know how to describe it, but a bit different in the classroom. Yeah.
Well, I think he was different as a coach too.
Yeah.
He. I just looked at him as maybe someone that didn't fit in Biddeford. He's just different. I had him 1 year, I think, as a coach, as my sophomore year. Then Jim McGrath became the coach after that. But and so I don't think I had Dudley Coyne as a teacher. Yeah. He's a good guy, but just different.
Yeah. So before I leave St. Louis, what was your favorite sport to play out of the three?
I've always been torn between that question, Tom. A lot of people have asked me that. I enjoyed football games. I enjoyed basketball practices and games. So baseball was the least of the three. I played it, but I didn't really work at it a lot in the summertime. I played basketball in the summertime. Did very little weightlifting for football. I threw the football in the summertime, but I don't know. I was torn my whole life. Even when I went to the University of Maine, I played freshman football and freshman basketball, and then I went to see the basketball coach because I also wanted to continue playing basketball. I thought I could do both, and because the football season overlapped the basketball season, he wasn't sure about me going out. Because I played basketball for him my freshman year, we were undefeated. And so I veered off and played 3 years of football. But as I look at it now, I wish I would have continued playing basketball also. I So
Yeah, I never understood that. It's not like the seasons overlapped up there, you know.
not like today.
No.
You know, not like today.
Yeah.
And back then, as a freshman, you couldn't play varsity, which
Yeah.
is different than today.
Yeah.
So
So let's move on to prep school. How did that happen?
I knew I had to go to prep school to get my verbal SATs up. And Bob Cote helped me a little there with, I was being recruited to play football at Bridgeton Academy. And that's pretty much where I was going to go. A friend of mine was playing there, Gabby Price, who eventually became the Bangor football coach, good friend of mine, great guy. And he had called me about trying to get me to go to Bridgeton. And that's where I was planning to go. And then I got a phone call from somebody from Biddeford. I think it was Roland Labonte, who played with Guy Guerin, was a teacher at St. Thomas More. I'd never heard of St. Thomas More before.
That's the prep school in Connecticut you went to.
Right,
correct? Yeah.
Colchester, Connecticut. And he called me and they wanted me to play football and basketball for them. And, you know, my parents, we weren't very rich. We didn't have a lot of money. And so we went to Connecticut to go talk to the headmaster on what kind of scholarship I would get. And it was enticing because all my aunts and uncles from my mother's side lived in Connecticut. So that would be convenient for me too. So we went to St. Thomas More. They gave me a pretty good scholarship for playing football and basketball, and made the decision to go there. And it was a great experience because our football team wasn't great, but our basketball team was unbelievable because I had the experience of playing with. We won the New England Championship prep school tournament against Worcester Academy, and we had I played with Ernie DiGregorio, who went to Providence College as an All-American and was played in the NBA, was Rookie of the Year his first year in the NBA. I mean, that was a great experience. And to this day, we just had a reunion. 6 or 7 of the guys are still alive, and our coach is still alive, and we all met at Mohegan Sun for a little reunion a few years ago, and we still have a website on that we stay in touch with each other. So it's pretty cool. And at St. Thomas More was disciplined. It was like St. Lawrence. You had to wear a suit, coat, and tie to go to class. Very disciplined. You had to study every night.
You didn't go to the pool hall those nights?
No. But if your room was clean on Saturday morning when they inspected it, you could leave for the weekend. And so I would go to my aunt's house and stay with them for the weekend. And they had a son who was maybe 4 or 5 years younger than me, maybe a little more than that. And we played basketball over the weekend in his yard and so forth. And so it was a great experience, a great year for me. I mean, we played in basketball. We had a tournament at Washington, D.C. at Catholic University and played against the number 1 high school team in the country, DeMatha High School. And we ended up losing by 4 points. And Ernie DiGregorio had like 40 points, and it was just a great experience, so. And from there I got recruited to go to Boston University or University of Maine, and I decided to go to Maine.
And why Maine versus BU?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I maybe was a little intimidated by living in a big city in Boston versus a campus in Orono, Maine, coming back to Maine. Walt Abbott recruited me and at Maine, and I think they presented themselves maybe better than BU did at the time. I can't quite remember, and so I made that decision.
Was that a good decision for you?
Yeah, I think it was. I mean, there were other schools that recruited me, schools like Bates and Bowdoin, but I couldn't get in those schools. So now, at a school like that, I could have played at least 2 sports, and
Yeah, smaller
who
schools.
knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a good experience, and I learned a lot. I think University of Maine, by me participating in football and even basketball, and I got to hang around the training room a lot with a legend there. Wes Jordan was the trainer, and then you had Jack Butterfield, who was a legend as the baseball coach, Skip Chappelle, who's a legend as a basketball coach, and Walt Abbott, who's a legend at Maine. And I knew I wanted to get into coaching, and so I would hang around the training room. Those guys hung around there, and I would pick their brains to learn more about coaching. And that really helped me. I think that prepared me a lot to become a coach.
Yeah. And where did you end up student teaching?
I ended up student teaching. We had Claire and I got married with Claire in my junior year. And in my senior year, I did my student teaching at Old Town. It was right across the street from our apartment in Old Town. And then they hired me, my senior year, they hired me to be the JV boys basketball coach. And then they hired me as the head baseball coach, which was a shock to me. And so I did that, and then the following year they gave me a teaching job to go along. But they said I couldn't coach 3 sports because I was a first-year teacher. They didn't want me to coach 3 sports, so I had to pick 2. So I picked football and basketball. And I stayed there that 1 year, and then after that, I was pretty confident in myself that I felt like I was ready to be a head coach. And so I applied for a football job at Orono High School, a football job at York High School, and a basketball job at Brewer High School. And the Brewer interview came first, so I went there, had the interview. On my way back to Old Town, they had called my house and told Claire that I had the job, and for me to call them back and see if I was going to take it, and I did.
How long were you at Brewer?
2 years. Because what happened there was I was assistant football coach, head basketball coach, and a teacher at Brewer. And Brother Richard, 2 years after my second year at Brewer, Art Cote got done as the basketball coach at Biddeford. And Brother Richard called me, wanted me to come down and meet with the superintendent and himself and talk about the job. And so I went down to Biddeford, and Brother Richard, we picked up the superintendent, and this is strange, but we went to Biddeford Pool by the rocks and stayed in the car, and they talked to me about coming to Biddeford.
Sounds like a mafia deal to me.
But then I had my official interview.
Yeah.
After that, which was a coaching interview for about an hour and a half. The school board members, superintendent, the AD, and they offered me the coaching job, and then they said I could go upstairs and talk to Joel Cruttle, the department head for social studies, and he would tell me what I was teaching. And so it took 15 minutes to talk to Joel about what I was teaching. The interview was all coaching, and that stuff doesn't happen today anymore. But
I do remember there was a lot of excitement about you coming back to Biddeford then, and because my younger brother was at Biddeford High at that time, and I know a lot of his friends were excited about you coming back home to coach. Before we go on more to coaching, I want to talk about you and Claire. How did you and Claire meet? And any interesting stories you're willing to share.
in the 6th grade,
You were like your father.
we sat together at the movies, and all my buddies, Kamiri and all those guys, would sit right behind me and tease me and so forth, because I had a girlfriend and so forth. But so in the 6th grade is where we went to school together, but we didn't. That stopped for a while. After the 8th grade year, I walked her home from school, carried her books home and all that, and we became boyfriend and girlfriend for the next 7 years before we got married. So, there's some things I'd like to take away from that too. Back then, I was a pretty possessive guy, and I thought she was really pretty and so forth, and so
She was.
I was very jealous, and but anyways, it ended up and now we've been married for 52 years.
Well, was that hard, leaving to go to prep school and you, Maine, while she stayed home?
Yeah, she, like I told you, after high school, she became a telephone operator and worked in Biddeford. But my parents came to Connecticut almost every weekend to see me play, and Claire would come with them. So they would take.
That must have been nice.
Yeah, that was nice. They took Claire with them, and my mother and I both got our license my senior year, because I told you, nobody in the family, we didn't have a car, and nobody drove. My father never drove, and so my mother and I went for our license the same day. We both got it, and we bought this big station wagon. They called it a beach wagon back then, for a car, and so when I went to prep school, they would come to Connecticut and visit and stay with my mother was happy about that, because she would visit her siblings and so forth, and
Sure.
so
Yeah.
it was good.
And you have 2 children?
2 children. Chris is 49 and Jen is 44.
And how many grandchildren? I
5.
lost count when I was trying to go through your information.
5.
Yeah. And are they all in the area?
Everybody's in Biddeford. Well, close to the grandkids.
That must be nice for them too.
It is nice.
Yeah.
It is nice.
Yeah.
We're really close to them.
Yeah. And Claire worked in the public school system for a number of years too, right?
Yes, she was a librarian assistant at the primary school. I think she started at the Emory School and then moved to the primary school. She loved her job, and then the position sort of got cut over the years, but she really enjoyed doing that.
Ron, can you talk a little bit more about your grandchildren?
Yeah, well, we spend a lot of time, Claire and I spend a lot of time with the grandkids now. Claire babysits the 2 little ones, Carter, who's 4, and Emerson, who's 2. And the other 3 grandchildren we support in whatever activity they're doing. Clarice is a sophomore at the high school, and she's on the volleyball team. She, last year as a freshman, was on that state championship team. She played quite a bit, and was a good experience for her. This year she's a sophomore. She tore her ACL this past spring, so she was out for the whole year, but she was still a member of the team and participated in every practice and so forth, cheering them on and so forth. Cote, my grandson, he's in the band. He's a drummer, and so we go to a lot of band competitions and see him perform. And my granddaughter Annie, who is 11, is involved in dance. She's in 5 dances, and so we go to a lot of dance competitions and see her. So we support the grandkids as much as we can, and it's different for me because, being a football, basketball, baseball guy, now I go see volleyball, the band, and dancing, which is totally different for me.
So, one of the things I didn't ask you, and I don't want to forget to before we go into coaching, is when St. Louis closed. What are your memories of that, and how did you feel about that at that time?
Really, really sad. That was a tough decision. Tough. Felt really bad about that because, I told you what my goal was as a junior in high school. I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. Well, I didn't tell you that I also wanted to come back to Biddeford and do that at St. Louis. That was the goal. And I did almost all of it. I came back to Biddeford and taught and coached at Biddeford High School, which was tremendous also. But back then, you don't know what the future holds, and for St. Louis to close, because I thought we had such a great tradition a lot of pride. It was a great school, and I'm not sure even at that time that needed to be closed, because I think a few years after that they opened Macaulay in Portland, and so again I think there was some politics involved there with the diocese.
I worked with Norman Fauché, who was a parish council president at that time for a number of years, and he said they could get no help from the diocese at all, none. And
Yeah.
it was just,
Yeah,
it was the final nail in the coffin, I guess.
Yeah.
It was sad. So you come back to Biddeford.
Yep.
So you're coaching and teaching. Talk about some of those experiences.
Well,
You a lot of success at a high level.
we did have a lot of success. I was an assistant football coach, and I was a head basketball coach at the time. And first couple of years, we were okay in basketball. In football, we struggled a little the first couple of years. Mike Landry, Dave Carey was the head coach my first year. He got done. Mike Landry got the job. And Mike Landry's first 2 years, we struggled a little. And then the third year, we put it together. And we did well. In 1980, we won the state championship. That was our first state championship in football. And basketball, I felt we were pretty competitive over the years, made the tournament and so forth. And it was a great experience. I coached 16 years with Mike Landry, and Ron Willett was an assistant, and we started with Don Wilson was an assistant, and Don Wilson became the AD. It was a great group of guys, and the kids that we coached, football, basketball, baseball, whatever, the kids that we coached at Biddeford were great kids. Great kids, great attitude for the most part, very coachable, worked hard, and would do anything for you. And back then, the parents were behind us, and they wanted discipline for their kids, and they wanted them to work hard, and because of that culture that we created, I guess. That really came from the city too, the way we were as a community. We were successful, and
I think there were very high expectations in the 70s because the two schools were good separately, that they were going to be invincible once they merged.
Yeah. When we went to school, we were good. St. Louis and Biddeford was at one point Class C, then they went Class B, and then they went Class A when we were like juniors and seniors, and both teams were good.
Yeah.
And then when St. Louis closed, and that merger, I think, was a little difficult for the Biddeford kids, St. Louis kids, and even the community. You had the St. Louis fans, your diehards, and your Biddeford fans, and I'm not sure that whole thing was accepted, but they won it all. And then as the years move on, it just blends in. But even today, you could pick out the kids on the Biddeford team that, he would have gone to St. Louis, or he would have gone to Biddeford. So when I came to Biddeford, it was still that little friction that, I was a St. Louis guy and not a Biddeford guy. But having worked with Mike Landry, who was a Biddeford guy, and then Don Wilson was a St. Louis guy, and we just all became friends, and it was a great situation. Great situation.
And how was it coaching your son? What kind of experience was that for you?
As I look back, Tom, it's pretty much, I never really thought of this, but it's a unique experience in the fact that as a varsity coach in football, I was an assistant in football, and I was the quarterback coach and the defensive back coach and called the plays, and he was the quarterback and played defensive back. So he's involved with me quite a bit, all the time in practice. Basketball, I was the head coach. He was on the team. He was one of our better players. In baseball, I was the head coach, and he was the starter there. And to have coached your son in 3 varsity sports for 3 straight years, I think is unique. I'm not sure there are a lot of coaches who have done that, who have been involved with their sons that much. And so when you look back at that experience, it was a good experience, and we share a lot of great memories in that time span. I'm not sure if it was great for him all the time, but for me, on the field or on the court, I had to put my coaching hat on and not my dad, my father's, or the father hat on, and coached him the same way I would coach anyone else on our team, and make sure that he didn't get any preferential treatments. And at home, you try to take the coaching hat off and put the father hat on, and sometimes I had a little hard time with that, because if we lost, I would take those losses home with me and so forth. But Claire was good because she was the buffer, and but all in all, it was a great experience, and the memories are just unbelievable. And luckily for me, he was a good enough athlete where he proved himself that he could be a starter and play and so forth.
But he played on some pretty good football and basketball teams, didn't he?
He played on 2 state championship football teams.
Yeah.
He played on the only basketball team that went to the state tournament in '91 in the finals, state championship game.
He was on that team. Yeah.
And he also played on a Telegram League championship baseball team. So his high school career was pretty good for him. He was on 4 teams that were championship level. And he had a lot of success as an all-state quarterback, an all-conference basketball player, honorable mention in baseball, and he was captain of all 3 sports.
Was he more easygoing about?
Yeah, he's not like me.
Not as intense as you?
No.
No.
He's a lot like Claire, more easygoing and so forth. And I felt that's another reason why I had to try to motivate him more. My daughter Jen is like me. She's intense in everything that she does.
And did she play high school sports?
She could have been a very good athlete, Tom. She played, she was a cheerleader.
I remember you telling me that you thought she was going to be a really good athlete when, before, this was even before she was in high school or anything.
And she devoted her whole time to cheering and became an All-American cheerleader and all that stuff. So.
Well, you got to follow your passion,
Yep.
Yeah. So those were interesting experiences. So you coached Chris in all 3 sports at some level, and that was the Telegram League championship you were coaching that year, and you won a state baseball championship earlier than that, right? In the 80s sometime?
84.
Yeah. Talk about that, because, at least when we were in high school, we didn't have very many good baseball teams.
No, well, I think the 1923 team did well at Biddeford.
Yeah. St. Louis won the Telegram League championship in '56, I think.
Yes.
And Bob Cote was coaching.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in 1984, I coached baseball 11 years at Biddeford. And in 1984, we had a great team. Steve Saminsky, John McEwen, Gary Doobie, Peter Ann, all Ken Trumbull. A great group of guys. And we were very good. They were good players, and it was a successful year and a great year. We went to University of Maine, played against Brewer High School for the champion. I know, isn't that funny? At University of Maine, we played the state championship game. The coach for Brewer was a guy named Dick Devani, who was my quarterback coach at University of Maine.
Well, he was a star at Maine in the early '60s, wasn't he?
A big star.
Yeah.
And he coached Brewer, and so we played them.
Was he from Brewer? Was he from Brewer, or maybe I'm just thinking he was coaching there?
You know what? I'm not sure. That's a good question. I think he was from New Hampshire.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'm just confusing that he was coaching at Brewer at one time.
And we won the state championship in baseball, which is not a lot of teams have done. And even getting to the basketball state championship game not many teams have done that at Biddeford High School.
Yeah.
You know, it's a great accomplishment.
Well, it is. It's hard to do.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
But so we had good talent, Tom, and I was fortunate to coach them.
Well, I think you had a lot of good coaching also at that time. Not just yourself, other people. You had some good coaches in the system.
Yep.
I'll go back to something you touched on. I wanted to ask a question. Brother Richard Heater, how did he end up at Biddeford High School? Do you know that story?
Wow. I'm not sure that I know that
Yeah.
story. That when he got that, I was wondering, because I thought for sure when St. Louis closed, Bob Cote would go to Biddeford. That's what I thought, and I think a lot of people thought that. And then he ends up at Thornton Academy, and I never would have guessed that Brother Richard would end up as the AD at Biddeford High School. And so I don't know
And he still remained a brother, right?
Yes, he still remained a
So
brother.
they supported that in some manner.
Yeah, and that very strange, and I don't know how that came
Yeah.
about. I don't know that story.
You're in, I think, every sports hall of fame there is in Maine right now, from what I can remember and see, and deservedly so. What did it feel like to get these honors in your, late career?
I never thought that would happen, Tom. I coached because I loved it, and I did it for a long time. I look back now and I wonder how I coached three sports for 11 years. And basketball I've coached for 49 years. Football I've coached for, 28 or 27, 28 years. But so I did it because I loved it. I would have never imagined that I would have been inducted in Maine Sports Legends Hall of Fame, the Maine Basketball Hall of Fame, and last year, and the Maine Sports Hall of Fame, and then the Biddeford Hall of Honors, and I feel very fortunate to have been inducted in those organizations, and never would have guessed that, Tom. Never would have guessed that. So
Yeah, I'm not going to read them off. You're on. We'll post it on with the interview on the site of all the honors that you've garnered over the last few years. But you should be proud of that. What was your favorite sport to coach?
loved them all. Football, the games were really exciting. We were for the most part good, and I enjoyed the role that I played as calling the offensive plays and working with the quarterbacks, which was my strong point. I also coached the defensive backs, and Mike Landry did the defense, and Ron Willett did the line, and the fourth person did the receivers. But so I enjoyed the games of football. Basketball, I really, like I told you earlier, I really liked the practices. Basketball, you're close to the fans, and so there's a little more pressure there, I think, as a coach. You're hearing everything, and you're close to all the fans, and you got to make quick decisions. In football, you huddle up and you run a play, and you're far away from the fans, and I've got headphones on, so all I'm hearing is the guy upstairs talking to me, which is Ron Willett for the most part.
Yeah. Wasn't Mike?
No. Well, my first couple of years was Mike, and then
There was not a more intense athlete or coach, I don't think.
he
in the area.
finally changed that around, where he was going to take care of the defense and I was going to call the plays on offense.
Yeah.
And that became a better situation for us.
Yeah. He didn't have the demeanor of Bob Cote, that's for sure. Yeah.
No, he's a pretty intense guy.
Yeah.
And but when you look at, there's different ways to do things.
Yeah.
And that would be a little more difficult today, coaching like that, in today's world. But back then, it was fine.
Yeah.
And the other thing that was good is that we won.
Yeah.
And the Biddeford people were so full of pride and going to games and wanting to see us win that it almost became, we won 6 state championships, in the 80s and early 90s, and it's almost like we would win a state championship and then, we're thinking about next year already. And it almost became like, and the fans, the Biddeford community expected us to continue.
Do you think it's better now than then, or is there a happy medium somewhere, or?
It's different today. I don't know about better.
Yeah, it's different.
It's different. Yeah.
The school's a lot smaller too. We just
Yes.
I'm not.
Yes.
I think it's different in high school athletics everywhere, but I mean in Biddeford it's certainly.
Yeah.
But it's a much smaller school also.
The enrollment now is 750, somewhere's around there, and we were back then. We were like close to, 1,100, 1,200.
Yeah.
Well, right around there, I guess.
Yeah, my brother and sister that graduated in 79, 80, their classes were over 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that part of it is different, and everything about it is different today, and it's almost like the parents are a little different towards they're more involved, I think, and there's a little more pressure on coaches today.
Oh, really?
I think in because every parent wants their kid to play, and not that they didn't want that when we were coaching, but they sort of accepted it maybe a little better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What was it like going to college and coaching?
That was a big decision on my part, Tom. I was coaching 3 sports at Biddeford, but I was also getting close to burnt out too, because I would work year round coaching and the teaching, but I loved it. And then the opportunity came where the University of New England had a basketball job open, men's basketball job opened, and someone had talked to me about maybe applying for it and so forth, and I thought about it and wasn't sure, giving up my 3 sports at Biddeford and go coach at UNE, if that was the right decision. And anyways, I applied and was fortunate that I got the job. I stayed there 7 years. I thought UNE was a great place to work. I thought it was a great place to coach. Different than high school. You're not as involved with the parents. And those guys that are playing at that Division III level want to play. They're not on scholarships. The tough part for me is that I was still teaching at Biddeford, which was a full-time job, and coaching basketball at the University of New England, which was a full-time job, and I was doing it on a part-time basis. So that was difficult. I think and I couldn't afford to give up my teaching and go coach at UNE, just doing that, because I would have lost a lot of my salary. Today, you could be a full-time coach at UNE, and that would be a great situation.
Yeah, they've grown quite a bit in the last 30 years or so.
They've grown tremendously. They got great facilities there.
They got a football team now, right?
Yeah. I mean, who would have guessed that?
Yeah.
So it was a good place for me to coach. It was a new chapter in my life. It was a challenge for me, because even though I was fairly successful as a high school coach, to go at the college level, I had to prove myself that I could get it done at the college level. I think we had competitive teams at UNE. So it was a challenge, and overall it was good. It was a good situation, and I did it for 7 years. Then I felt like, the thing about coaching is, I've always believed in is at the high school level you can develop relationships with the kids that you're coaching, and you're more a part of their life. At the college level, I didn't see those kids a whole lot except for practices, and so my relationship maybe wasn't as close as I wanted to as a coach, or that I was used to at the high school level, and so that bothered me a little. So after 7 years, I gave it up, and I got a part-time job at Brady's Screen Print, and I've been there for 25 years. And then I got involved with helping people in the coaching. Bill Harriman asked me to help coach him in basketball, girls basketball. I did that for like 3 years.
What was that like, coaching the girls after coming off boys all those years?
All those years I coached boys, except in the summertime I worked basketball camps and we did coach some girls, but I really enjoyed coaching the girls. Number one, they want to learn. Guys think they're good already. The girls don't. I think the girls appreciate what you're trying to do with them a lot more than the guys. And so it was, coaching the girls was a great experience for me. I really enjoyed it. I did that. Well, then Bill Harriman got done after 3 or 4 years that I was helping him, asked if I was interested. And so I did the girls basketball team for 6 years until I got sick. I had cancer.
Were you still teaching then too, or just coaching?
Yes, I retired in 2009. The 2009-2010 was my last year as a head girls basketball coach. And so, because of the cancer, I took care of myself. But then I missed it. And after that, I said that I would only help someone, be an assistant somewhere, and I didn't really want to go back to Biddeford because I didn't want that person to be shadowed by Ron Cote and all that stuff.
Yeah, I understand that.
So a couple other people from different schools called, and I went to be an assistant at Sheriff's for a year, and then I got a call from the Boosters president at Scarborough High School to come and apply for the girls basketball job, and I did that for a year. Then my cancer came back and I had some health issues, so I gave it up, and after that I said I would only be an assistant. And my assistant that was at Scarborough got the Wainfleet girls basketball job. He called me. I went to help him for 3 years.
They've had some good teams there, haven't they?
Yeah, excuse me, yes. And that was a different situation. And then I went to Alachua Beach, and I helped John Regan for a year, the boys coach. And then I helped Dean Plant with the girls basketball coach at Alachua. And then they convinced me to take the 7th grade girls basketball job because they didn't have anyone. And so I did that for a year.
Good for you.
And then I came back to Biddeford, and they asked me to be the boys' 7th grade coach. So I did that for a year, and then I helped the girls' basketball coach the year after that, Janine Parody. And then the last couple of years, I've only been doing like working with individual kids on the side. So I don't know if I'll get back into helping any team. I don't know if I'll do that. I don't know if I could go to practice every day, stand out there 2 hours, and I can't demonstrate like I used to. I can't move like I used to.
None of us can.
I still know what to do, but
So let me ask you this, because you talked about your daughter being more like you. What would have that been like, coaching her if she had gone to be a basketball player?
that would have been difficult, Tom. That would have been difficult because she was very intense with the cheerleading squad, and I think with girls you have a little more drama, And I think that would have been, I'll just say, I think it would have been a little more difficult to do that.
We'll leave it at that. We didn't talk at all about teaching. What was it like being in the classroom for you? I mean, your life, a lot of it revolved around sports, and now you're academia here. What was that like?
I wouldn't take that too far, but I majored in physical education. I want to be a physical education teacher, and I also got my degree in social studies.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is a good thing because I had two areas there, and my first 10 years of teaching was in social studies. And finally, a phys ed job opened at Biddeford, and I was lucky enough to get that job. And so I moved from the classroom to the gym and worked with Mike Landry and Madeline Goulette, and I stayed in phys ed the rest of my career.
Oh, so you were only in social studies
10 years.
Oh, well, you were in quite a while then.
Yeah,
Okay.
10 years.
Right.
And it was great. It was fine.
You enjoyed it?
Yeah, it was fine.
Yeah.
You know, but I think my area was more the gym area, and that became a good situation. Like I said, we were, I did teach health and phys ed, so I was in the classroom, every other day because of the schedule.
One thing we didn't talk about that we talked offline, that was your dad, and he was a pretty good softball player, and good athlete overall. Yeah.
The thing with my parents, my father was taken out of the 8th grade to go to work, so he never got the opportunity to play high school. And so he never had the opportunity to be a football player or be a basketball player. He was a good baseball player. He could hit a ball a mile. They would play, when he was growing up, they would play behind St. Andrew's Church. From what everybody tells me, he would smack the ball. I do remember when I was a kid going to see him play, men's softball was a big thing in Biddeford at the Mayfield. It was fast pitch softball, and there was a lot of people in the area who were good pitchers and threw the ball pretty hard. And he played third base and had a gun for an arm and could hit the ball. And I think I told you this, he was selected to represent the city of Biddeford in a home run derby in Lewiston. The winner would get $20, and my father won the home run derby, and they gave him a case of Wheaties instead of the $20. But so yeah, he was a good. He just never had the opportunity, Tom, and I think, by me becoming the athlete and playing the 3 sports, he enjoyed, watching his son play. My mother was taken out of school in 6th grade, and she wasn't, she went to games and watched and so forth, but she wasn't really in the athletic field.
I remember your dad being at Little League games all the time, or at least it seemed like he was. Him and Paul Camille's dad were at a lot of Little League games, and your mom being at your basketball games all the time. I remember those.
Wow, that's good memory on your part, Tom.
Yeah.
My mother did go to basketball games.
I remember that.
See, my father worked second shift, so he missed a lot too, and that bothered him. Because he worked from 3 to 11, and he missed a lot of my basketball games. But he did take some time off to see some games and football and so forth. And my father supported me. My 3 sisters, Joanne is the only one that played basketball. My other 2 sisters didn't play sports. And then my father was a real big supporter of the grandkids, because my family is very athletic. Some good athletes in our family. My sister's kids, they all played. John St. Ange became a Fitzpatrick Award winner, and his brother Peter played. They all played football, baseball, and even on Claire's side, her sister's kids, Joey Drapo was a great player at the University of Maine baseball, great football player in high school, and Justin played football. So the family is pretty sports, and my father supported, went to all, like you said, Little League games and high school games and whatever that he could make.
So before we wrap up with a few questions here, another thing just went through my brain. If you don't want to answer this, that's fine. Is senior year baseball. You guys had a pretty good baseball team. You were 8-8, and if I remember right, Ray did not play that year. Ray Belanger. Do you think that would have made the difference for you guys to have won a championship that year?
No question, it would have made us better.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'd have won this championship,
Yeah.
but it would have made us a heck of a lot better. And you look back on that, and it's too bad because it also hurt us in the basketball tournament. Because I don't know if you remember that,
I do.
but
I do.
Ray had, back then I guess they said it was long hair, and the coach wanted him to get a haircut, and he was stubborn and didn't want to get a haircut. And we were going into the tournament in basketball, and Ray was the second leading scorer on our team, and he's a good athlete, good player. And the first game we played Chevrolet, and we beat him. And Ray came. He didn't start because of the haircut thing, and he came off the bench and scored 18 points. We beat Chevrolet. Then the next game was South Pole in the semifinals, and Ray didn't start again. And then Ray got mad because he didn't start, and his attitude was not good, and came in and got 0 points against us for us, and we lost by 2. And so that was tough. People in Biddeford remember that.
I remember. Yeah.
And then in baseball, it was the same coach, and because of that, he didn't go out for baseball.
To play, right. And he had been all telly the year
He was an all-telly catcher. He was probably the best player. That was probably his best sport. I mean, he was a great football player, basketball, and a great catcher.
Yeah.
Would have had a shot to maybe get drafted.
Yeah. And
he's a great hitter, strong, and he didn't go out. And the maddening thing is that, you look back on it, because now that I've become a coach and all that, he's trying to get back at the coach. Well, he didn't hurt the coach; he hurt the team.
Yeah.
And the other thing too is that he went to all our games.
I didn't realize that. So his heart was still there, probably.
Yeah. And we were all his friends.
Yeah.
He was in our group, and so we ended up being 500 team. But with Ray, we would have probably gone
a couple of other games, I would think.
Yeah.
So. Wow. Okay. Okay. So we'll start wrapping up here. What has then being from Biddeford meant to you? And it's got to be a piece of what you've done. I mean, you grew up here, you came back, you've taught here, you've lived here all your life.
Well, Claire was from Biddeford, I was from Biddeford, and my goal was, when I went away, we lived in Bangor for a couple of years, we lived in Old Town for a couple of years. We wanted to come back to Biddeford. We wanted to come back close to our family and so forth, and we've lived here ever since. And so it meant a lot to him to come back and work here and live here. And Claire was close to her family. I was close to my family. I'm not sure that I would have wanted to live anywhere else. Yeah. It's funny how that is, but now it worked out. But so it was good.
Yeah. Who were the major influences on you through life?
I would say that my father was a major influence on me. I think my father is the one who got me interested in athletics. I can remember being a little kid watching the Boston Celtics on TV with Bob Cousy and Bill Russell, and my father was a big New York Yankee fan, and that's the reason I cheer for the Yankees. I've never liked the Red Sox. My whole family is all Red Sox except me. But my dad used to listen on the radio to the Yankee games and Mickey Mantle and Yogi Berra and all those guys. And I remember watching those games. And then back then it was the New York Giants because they were on TV. And so my father got me, I think, interested in sports because of his interest. And like I told you, we'd go out in the backyard and throw a baseball around and taught me how to, catch the baseball and so forth. And then as I got a little older and started playing high school, I think Bob Cote was someone that I really admired and really wanted to be like as a coach. And like I told you, he was the reason I stayed at Biddeford and didn't transfer to. I stayed at St. Louis, didn't transfer to Biddeford. So I think those two people. As I got into coaching later on in my years, a good friend of mine is Bob Brown, who has coached everywhere. But when I got the Biddeford job from Brewer, he was the first guy. He was coaching at South Pole. He was the first guy that called me and congratulated me and said that he would do anything to help me. I had met him when I was at Old Town. He was the Rockland coach and the Old Town.
I didn't realize he was at Rockland.
Yeah, and the Old Town coach Bob Leahy, who I was his JV coach. We went to scrimmage Rockland, and he introduced me to Bob Brown. That's how I met Bob Brown, and from that point on, we became fairly close. We worked Swish Camp. He ran Swish Camp. I worked there for like 10 years or so. And then he and I, when I got the UNE job, he and I ran a camp at UNE. And even to this day, we are friends. Bob Brown's son became an NBA coach. So he was a very important part of my life as a coach. He was like my mentor. I've learned a lot from him.
So what's it like to be at this phase of your life, semi-retired, and having all your family around and everything, and having won a battle with major disease?
Good, except I don't like being old. I still have the enthusiasm and the desire to coach people, but yet my health doesn't really want me to go out there every day, and then my family doesn't want me to go out there every day and do that, even though my mind says, I could still do it, my family, especially my daughter and Claire, my wife, they coaching's done, Dad. Coaching's done, and I don't quite believe them, but so it's a lot of my attention is with my grandkids, and we follow the grandkids, and so my life has changed a little from the football, basketball, baseball.
It sounds like it has. So has your life turned out to be like you had envisioned it when you were younger and heading off to prep school and college?
Yeah, pretty much, Tom, I think. I had envisioned that I would be a coach and a teacher. I envisioned that I wanted to do that in Biddeford. Didn't know if that was going to happen, but it did. But I would not have imagined the success that I've had and all the Hall of Fame stuff that I received, that would happen. I would have never guessed that. But so, yeah, I guess my life, I've been married 52 years. I got 2 great kids. I got great grandkids. Yeah. I would say yes. Probably better than I expected.
What is something you want to make sure that people take away from hearing your story?
Oh, wow.
Or how would you like to be remembered? Another way of putting it.
Well, I hope people, by the way I spoke today and so forth and what I've done with my career, I hope that they feel that, I did the things that I wanted to do in life, and I really worked hard at trying to be the best that I could be. And that all the kids that I've coached, I tried to be fair with them, and obviously I didn't make everybody happy, but I tried hard in doing that, and so I hope I'm a good family man. I love my kids, my wife, and my whole life is sports and family. I didn't do much else. I every so often like to go to the casino now and to do a little of that, play a little blackjack. But we used to go on vacations and so forth, but we don't do a lot of that anymore. So that's pretty much my life.
Sounds like a pretty good life to me, Ron.
I didn't go to bars and drink, or I don't drink today. I don't know. Hopefully they think I'm a decent person.
Anything else you would like to share that we didn't discuss today?
Geez, Tom, we covered a lot of things. I talked a lot. I think the thing that I wanted to do was, whether I was playing sports, I wanted to be the best I possibly could. And when I got into coaching, I wanted to be the best I could be. And I picked the brains of people that I respected. And now, as a veteran coach and pretty much out of it, I'm willing to share that with younger coaches. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else that I think we've covered a lot of stuff, Tom. I don't know.
Well, Ron, on behalf of the Biddeford Cultural and Heritage Center, I want to thank you for your time today and for sharing your story. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Tom, for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.